Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. What a fantastic way to start the day. 500 good people, good-hearted people, an army of goodness, an army of kindness, an army of change. If every one of you in the coming 2 or 3 days talk to 10 other people about your engagement, about compassion, about the urge to change the world for the better, there will be 5,000 people in Amman discussing these issues. They tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. You are seeds, and you can indeed change the world, and it needs change, badly needs change. I want to thank the American Community School, Larry, and all the staff. I want to thank warmly the Compassion Summit team and all the work that they have put in. I'm here together with my wife Arna. We are both activists, and we are extremely proud to be invited to this summit. I will speak for the next hour, or maybe 2 or 3, who knows. And I will talk about compassion and solidarity. Most of the pictures you see are my own pictures. I have taken them, and I have the permission to use them and show them, but I don't have the permission to spread them widely. So I ask you kindly not to take pictures of the pictures where there are patients or people in, also for security reason. I'm a medical doctor, as Larry said. I'm an anesthesiologist. In Norway, the anesthesiologists are responsible for the operating room, to give people anesthesia, the ICU, intensive care, pain clinic, and also the emergency medicine. I will come back to where I work and where I live. Could you take down the light a little bit on me, because it's a little bit too much? I like to be in the shadow. And I'm a professor at the University of Tromsø, the Arctic University of Norway. Thank you so much. During my talk, you will meet a number of people that I have met along my road as a medical doctor. We will travel to Norway, we will travel to occupied Palestine, Gaza, and we will travel back to Jordan and end here in Jordan. You will feel pain, you will feel anger, and you will feel maybe helplessness. But most of all, I want you to reflect on the pictures and on the stories I tell you, asking yourself the question, is there anything I can do about this? Because if we see ourselves as passive, as helpless, as without any influence, we will not be able to change the world. But if we see ourselves as tools of not only goodness, but activism, and active deeds of energetic work together, we can actually reform, remake, and change the world for the better. This is Mohammed, 9 years old, just survived a bomb attack on Gaza. This is Nashwa, Skaik, and Jasmine, 2 young women from Gaza that I met first time as medical students. They are no medical doctors. You will meet them later. But first, let's travel to the part of the world where I live. Beautiful northern Norway. I hope you have heard about Norway. No, Norway is not a city in Sweden. That's another country. Okay, it's a sovereign state. We're small. We're just 5 million people, but we're very happy to be a small, free state. This is one of the beautiful islands on the coastline in the northern Norway. I know some of the people living here. One of my workmates, Tor Magne, he's a helicopter pilot because I do my missions on the ambulance helicopter. He has 3 kids, and one of them is young Mr. Sverre. And one day when we were on call in the helicopter base in the university hospital, Sverre called his father, the pilot, on the Skype, and he said, "Dad, I urgently need to talk to you." And said, "Okay, what's the problem?" And he said, "Dad, what's more important, to do my homework or to save a life?" And he was desperate. And of course his dad said, "Well, come on, Sverre, you know where I work. Of course it's to save a life. Well, why do you ask me?" "Well, said Sverre, tell my mother that, because she says it's more important to do my homework. And his dad said, what's going on? Well, and then weepingly Sverre said, I have been rescuing a small duck baby in the shoreline, and I've been feeding the baby day and night for 5 days now. And now my mother says it's time to do my homework. How dare she take away my responsibility to save the life of the duck? So what was the most important thing? To do the homework or to save the life of the duck? Maybe he could do both, and that was the end of the story. So as one of the keynote speakers, Katie Kelly, has said, where you stand determines what you see. And he saw something different from what the adults saw, and he made a choice to prioritize the helpless duck baby. Muhammad, 9 years old. I meet him in Zaytoun. It's a suburb of Gaza City in Gaza. This is in 2012, a few days after the ceasefire. There was a heavy bombing of Gaza that fall. In the background, you can see their neighbor's house, the Abed Rabu family, where 3 people were killed, and 2 of his best friends and schoolmates were deadly wounded. We treated them in Al-Shifa hospital. I went back after the ceasefire to try to understand what had happened in the different neighborhoods. I had a long talk with Mohammed. He said he was happy to survive, but he was very sad for his friends. For most of the world, the Palestinians in Gaza are described as terrorists, as villains, as crazy people, and very dangerous people. They are not. They're ordinary people like us, 2 million of them, most of them kids and youngsters. Average age in Gaza is 17.6 years. It's a very young population, and Muhammad is one of them. And we talk about his future, and I ask him, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to strap on yourself a bomb belt and become a suicide bomber? He's not even close to it. He says, I really want to change the things. And I'm saving money every day, Dr. Matz, he tells me, because I want to go to UK and I want to be a doctor. Will he be able to do that? Well, probably not, because his family is very poor and the situation is much worse now than it was in 2012. And also, probably because of the siege, he will not be allowed to travel. Muhammad, 9 years old. As we are speaking, he is still in Gaza. And if you are a child of 12 or older in Gaza today, you have been through 4 different Israeli military attacks on your life, your school, your neighborhood, your family, your existence. And you've been living for the last 11 years in a besieged child ghetto. And then, for this boy, came the 4th attack, the fall of 2014. I met him in the emergency room in Shifa. I've been working in Mustashfa Al-Shifa, the Shifa hospital, during all the last 4 attacks. I was there in 2006, 9, 12, and 14 as a medical doctor. Read his eyes. He's your age. And try to understand what it is to be living in a situation like this. He might be Syrian. He might be Libyan or Afghani or Iraqi. These are our brothers and sisters, and they should be treated with the same kindness as you started your day with this morning, with nice people looking after you and making sure that you will have a good day and a good life. Compassion is the feeling for others as you feel for yourself, and a motivation to act accordingly. Compassion alone is not enough. We need to take consequences of the compassion and try to understand what we can do to change it for the better. Because every human has rights. That's anchored in the Declaration of Human Rights. Every human on earth, man and woman, child and adult, black or white, yellow or brown, has rights, and so also the Palestinians. And we have a choice. Shasmin and Nashwa, in 2009, Operation Cast Lead, 4 o'clock in the morning, Shifa Hospital. We're all completely drained and exhausted from all the work and all the injured and all the bloodshed that was going on night and day. They were not doctors at this time, they were young medical students, but they decided to volunteer. They came to Shifa along with other medical students, and they lived in the hospital for 2 weeks, night and day, and worked where they could find work, and they were, of course, extremely helpful and important. Here we're taking goodbye. I'm leaving back to Norway with my red passport. I can go anywhere. They can go nowhere. I meet them again in 2014, January, a few months before the next attack. They're now graduate doctors, and they say, we stay in Gaza. We want to support and serve our people. It is our duty. This is our land. I am no hero. The heroes are the locals. In Syria, in Jordan, in occupied Palestine. Far too often we tend to look at the white people coming with big resources and all the goodwill as the rescuers and the heroes. We are not. We are the old colonialists. And maybe the humanitarian caravan is part of that colonialism because it tends to overlook the local people and it tends to disregard and disrespect the local capacity and understanding. Let's move to Gaza, to the United States, and activism and compassion. We have followed the horror of the school shootings, and we have seen with great admiration the activities of the young people in the schools of the US, taking to the streets, being much more active and energetic than the adults, and demanding that there will be action and not just thoughts and prayers. That doesn't take us very long. New policy they demand, and they also point to the extremely important point that maybe the most violent element in society is ignorance. So to all of you, starting your lives now as adults to be quite soon, make up your own opinion. Don't believe the mainstream news. Go behind the news. Study, think, explore. Don't believe what I'm saying. If you want to find out what's going on in Palestine, travel to the West Bank. Travel to Gaza if you ever can. Find out for yourself. Ignorance is the most violent element because we tend to be fooled and we tend to be imposed on superficial understanding of the reasons for suffering and lack of happiness in people's lives. And in this turmoil in the US, new leaders stand tall. Emma Gonzalez, 18, you've all seen her on the television, stands up and becomes an activist leader. And not many days ago, it was this national massive walkout from the schools. So never ever underestimate the power of the youth. You are the main power of change. You've always been. It's the young people who see the world clearly and with a desire to make it better. From compassion to understanding to action to change. So you have to pose yourself some important questions. Who am I? Who do I want to be? How do I see the world? What is right? What is wrong? What can we change if we stand together? Glimpses of individual people gives us understanding and deeper insight in how this change can come about. But each one of you is a seed for change. But you need to allow yourself to feel, to be compassionate, and to act on your compassion. Maybe we could construct an active circle of compassionate change for a better world, as Larry introduced this session with. To me, the answer is yes, and I'll try to explain this circle of change, which I strongly believe in and which I have been fortunate to experience in my own life. But where in the world do I come from? This strange guy coming from somewhere speaking a weird form of English? Well, I can speak with a very typical Norwegian Scandinavian accent if you want, but that's a little bit hard to understand when I speak with a typical Scandinavian accent, isn't it? Can I change back to the normal English accent, or do you want me? Or I can speak with the Gaza accent, you know, it's even more fun when you speak with the Arab English accent. That's the best accent. Anyway, what do I do for a living and where do I live? I'm living up here in Tromsø. This is the Arctic Circle. Have you heard about that? This is Oslo, this is Copenhagen, Stockholm, London, Paris. This is what we call the Deep South. This is the North. It's on 70 degrees northern latitude, and I'm actually working in the northernmost university hospital and the northernmost university in the world. Next to us is the North Pole, as you can see right here. My city is a strong international solidarity city, and we have been formerly twin city with Gaza City since 2001. It's been a blessing for the people-to-people cooperation. We have this fantastic aurora borealis in wintertime. We have no sunshine, but we have this in on the skies in the nighttime. And in summertime, which we're heading towards now, then we have eternal sunshine, 24 hours. This picture I took last summer at midnight, going kayaking. We have a fantastic life. We're stinking rich, obnoxiously spoiled, lazy, and self-sufficient. It's not a good place to be. We're drowning in the butter eye of the porridge, in a way. So we have to look outside our own nice life and a bubble to see what is the important things to be engaged in the world today. But the friendship with Gaza is a strong movement in Tromsø, and it has been, as I said, a great blessing. Here I am on call. This is our ambulance helicopter. We're training. This is our rescue man, the HEMS crew. I'm sitting in the doorway here. And I'm giving the orders to the pilot, and we're training how to save some fat, lazy skier with a little small pain in his ass because he doesn't want to walk down the mountain, okay? That's one way to see it. The other way to see it is, of course, that this is a symbol of the value of one single human life. This is a governmental ambulance helicopter. All our hospitals are governmental. All our education is free of charge. If you go to medical school in Norway, regardless of your family's income, you will pay a tuition fee of about $100 a year. All healthcare is free because we have a welfare state. And this is what we are willing to pay to rescue one single person. The helicopter is a blessing. It's not armed. But when I'm sitting there on call, as I was last week, I cannot only look for nice virgin snow to ski the next weekend when I'm off call. I have to keep an eye on the less fortunate. The family who lost their house in Zaytun, my friend Mohammed, and my friend Samar Abudrabu. That's part of my obligation, because I'm so lucky to be so rich. This is the castle I'm working in. It looks like a fairy tale castle. It's the University Hospital of Tromsø. And this, of course, is my city in its peace, tranquility, security. We have enough water. We take a shower every morning, and drinking water, I can stick my tongue out and drink from the shower. My fridge is full of food. My kids can go to school without being arrested or stopped at checkpoints. It's a fantastic life. And here you see another example of the good life. We're on a mission to pick up a patient on one of the islands, and this is the scenery I look at when I fly in the ambulance helicopter. But just some few hours away, when I travel down to the Middle East, helicopters are not used to save lives, but to bomb lives. They're armed, be it a helicopter or a drone, and the situation is completely different. So let's leave my local paradise and go to Gaza, occupied Palestine. I've been working in Gaza for the last 15 years, on and off. It's part of my duty as a department head in my hospital, because my hospital considers itself a solidarity hospital. So I travel to less fortunate parts of the world to provide solidarity, medical solidarity. I've been working in Burma, in Cambodia, in Angola, in Iran, and most of the time I've been working in occupied Palestine. I've changed from doing all the clinical bloody work to more being a teacher and trainer of local medical people and barefoot doctors. But in Gaza, I take part in the medical work. And these are some of my extremely good friends. It's Khaled, the head nurse in the intensive care unit in Mustashfa al-Shifa, and it's Dina, a brilliant young heart surgeon, Palestinian, who is training to become a specialist. And I have to tell you, this work is a blessing. Always a source of new insight, of growth, of understanding and inspiration. I always come back richer, despite the blood on my boots and the sounds in my ears of the screaming children. Despite all the pain and the death, I do come back a richer human being. Because I have seen firsthand the greatness of these people, who stand tall in the bombing, in the havoc, not yielding to any pressure, in compassion with their people to save lives. It makes me a richer human being, and I thank them for that. And Gaza is such a small place in the world, right down here, as you know, a marathon long, 45 kilometers, 4 kilometers across here, 8 to 12 across here, under siege for the last 11 years, 4 massive attacks since 2006, a very impoverished population. Unemployment rate among young people in Gaza is getting close to 80%. 75% of the population are refugees, according to the UN criteria. And there is widespread malnutrition because of the siege. All of that is not a natural disaster. It's man-made, it's planned, it's executed with the greatest accuracy by those who are in charge and responsible for the occupation and the siege. In 2009, the UN head of UNRWA in Gaza said 1.5 million Palestinians are imprisoned in Gaza. As of now, they have grown to 2 million people. The average age is 17.6 years, and 60% are 18 and below. It's a massive child ghetto. And it's being bombed repetitiously. So this cartoon, I think, very much describes the situation. There is nowhere to go. You don't get out during the bombing. And those who keep you inside and block you from going are also bombing you. So the Palestinians in Gaza have been exposed to these massive bombings again and again. And you've seen it on television, you've heard the sounds, and you have maybe just switched the channel because you can't stand watching it. But imagine being your age in this situation. There is no shelter. There is nowhere to go. You can't escape to Lebanon or to Jordan or to Egypt because all gates are blocked. And the bombing goes on night and day. And outside the wall around Gaza stands the 4th strongest army in the world, ready to take on you if you try to escape. It is a desperate situation. And during every attack, there are extreme human tolls. And I'll just introduce you to some of the images, the faces of the human tolls. This is a young girl and her neighbor who just came in. It's 5 o'clock in the morning on the 20th of July, 2014, the night of the Shaya massacre. They're not injured enough to be admitted to the hospital. We have to send them out after careful, of course, looking over them, stitching a few wounds and sending them out again because we could not accommodate all the patients who came to Shifa. That night alone, we had 400 patients coming. Whole families, impoverished and already in a difficult situation, bringing their wounded children to the hospital, and the staff doing whatever they can. These are normal, decent human beings like you and me. The young boy is sitting outside the stitching room, as we called it, with her mother's scarf draped around his head, looking like an old man. He had a deep cut all the way into the bone. He had to be stitched, but because of the siege, we didn't have enough local anesthetics, so some of the kids, unfortunately, also had to have not sufficient anesthesia, to put it that way. Maybe it's your brother. Maybe it's your cousin. Maybe it's your neighbor. Now, let's stop for a minute and turn to the patient, to the person next to you. Just take a minute now. Turn around and talk for a minute with the person next to you about what you feel right now and what would you have done if you were there. Take a minute. We take a little break. So, my friends, let me hear what you were thinking, Shabab Lajara. Yes?
I think this problem is really sad, and we need to solve it because there are a lot of people dying.
Thank you so much. What's your name?
Safe.
We give him a big hand. I think that's a good thing.
I think to solve this problem, we actually have to solve it in a civilized way. So if you go and try and bomb something, it's going to cause more massacre and reduce the number of people living there. So I think the best way to solve it is know our history, know our language, and then we can go there and actually be able to solve it.
Thank
And
you.
change a lot.
Very good. Very good. Should we listen to the elders also?
My first experience seeing all of this in 2006 when we had our own conflict. But we believe in all of us to make a change, and it brings bad memories back to see all this again.
Okay, thank you. Big hand. Down the lights again. And I agree, we need to solve it in a civilized way. But I think the starting point is that you trust your feelings and that you titrate your judgment according to what you think is right and wrong. And if you think it's wrong, then it is wrong for you. Then you have the right and the duty to act. This is one of the wise old men, and he says it's a very simple thing. He says the root of the matter is very simple, an old-fashioned thing, love or compassion. If you feel this, you have a motive to existence, a guide for action, a reason for courage. His name was Bertrand Russell. He was the godfather, the starting point of the anti-nuclear bomb movement, which became worldwide, and I think he pinpoints it very well. This is a root for a motive for existence, a guide for action, a reason for courage. Very simple, love or compassion. So going beyond the political issues and sort of we have to solve this on a political level, what can you, what can I, what can each of us do to show kindness and support? That's the question of today. And a small but also important question is to ask ourselves, could help be unhelpful? Is it important to find out what kind of help could be most productive? I think the answer to that is also an important guide to find out how we can do the right things with the most impact. It's Palestinian nurses and doctors and not good-willing European and US doctors coming from outside who do the medical work in Gaza, like in Syria, like in Afghanistan. They are the real ones doing the work. They work around the clock with great compassion, and they save as many lives as possible under extremely difficult working conditions. Don't forget that the first thing that happens when there is bombing in Gaza is that the electricity is turned off. Currently, they have electricity 4 hours a day. The hospitals are all depending on generators, and if you don't have fuel, it's darkness in the operating room, and we have to switch on our mobile phones to see where the liver is. He was 17, he had a shrapnel to his liver. She was 40, she had a shrapnel to the chest. We only have 6 operating rooms, and we had 15 patients that needed urgent surgery, so the Palestinians put in 2 operating tables in each operating room, and we could double the capacity. This kind of innovation and flexibility You don't find it among us coming from the rich and spoiled part of the world because we're always waiting to have everything on our fingertip. That's what the locals do. And it's people like Shadi, the cleaner, who really gives me hope. He's cleaning the operating room after we've done yet another amputation. He's smiling, he is singing, he's telling jokes as we hear the bombs are falling. And remember that all the hospitals in Gaza are also suffering from the siege. They lack everything. They lack everything. So for me, there is no doubt, it is the unselfish and brave action of the locals which will save the most lives, because they are always there at the time of injury, and these medical conditions are time critical. You can't wait for a week to treat them. If you're bleeding, somebody has to stop it immediately, be it the neighbor or the ambulance paramedic or the nurse or the doctor in the hospital. It's time critical, and the locals are always there. So make no mistake, I am no hero. I dedicate this talk, as I always do, my talks on Gaza, to the real heroes. The medical staff, doctors, nurses, medical students, volunteers, paramedics, and the people of Gaza. This is Dr. Sobi Skaik, the medical head of Shifa Hospital, my mentor. This is the head of surgery, this is the head nurse, and some students. And like the Palestinian poet Rafif Siada, look her up on internet and listen to her poem, We Teach Life, Sir. These are the people who teach me life. These are the people on the compassionate side of life. I dedicate it to the brave, young, extremely exhausted medical workers of all types who never leave their patients. And I see it again and again, compassion, love, and solidarity. And you can see how tired they are. During the last attack in July 2014, it was Ramadan, and Gaza is almost void of food because of the siege. This was our iftar meal that the hospital leadership could provide. After break of fast every afternoon, every evening, I am not a Muslim, but of course I fasted with my brothers and sisters, and this was the portion they had to celebrate their iftar with. And then another day and night of hard work to try to make the best of the situation. So let me share with you a few personal experiences. I'll start in Beirut. Why did I choose to work with solidarity medicine, as I call it? Well, I made that choice at a pretty young age, pretty much your age. I studied, I was visiting many different ways of understanding the world, and I ended up with a deep feeling of guilt because of the colonial history of Europe. And I felt that we had an international responsibility to try to make a difference. My mother was a nurse, and she said, I have one claim on you. I have a sister and a brother too. My sister is also a doctor. And she said, whatever you do, I don't want you to be idle, passive, and ignorant. You have to make a stance, you have to make a choice. And if you choose the side of the oppressed and the less fortunate, you will not go wrong. And that has been ringing in my ears all my life. This is me as a young doctor. And pretty much at that time, I decided that I wanted to be an anesthesiologist because I wanted to support people who struggle against injustice, poverty, and occupation. My first mission was to Beirut. I was there in '81, first mission, and then I went back during the Israeli invasion and bombing of Beirut in 1982. Pretty much the same there as in Gaza. It was sieged. It was completely sealed in. Water, energy, food supply were cut, and they bombed night and day. And I met a young Palestinian who should change my life forever. His name was Khalil. The struggle of Beirut was extremely brutal. As you know, if you've read your history, and I appreciate that many of you have Lebanese roots or even maybe have been living in Beirut, and some of you, of course, have experienced 1982. The bombing was relentless night and day, and we sent a surgical crisis team from Norway, like a relay, and I worked then in a makeshift underground field hospital in the Catholic school in Beirut called Lahut, and we installed the field hospital in the garages. And here you see me. This is July 1982, and I'm giving anesthesia to a young Palestinian who we are amputating both legs on. I'm shit scared. It's the first time I am in the really blood fog of war, and it was my first graphic experience of the Israeli war machine. I thought I should never experience anything worse than that. I'm sorry to say that Gaza 2009 and 2014 was actually worse. But this is the typical picture that you see if you see us from the north coming to support the people in the south. But it's not the true picture, because the whole picture is not this one blonde, blue-eyed Norwegian doctor. This is the whole picture. There are 4 local Palestinians and Lebanese surgeons and nurses. I'm just 1 out of 5. I'm the minority of the team. They are the ones who really do the work, who knows the culture, who knows how to get water when we don't have, and who knows how to get some medical supplies. And this is part of the Orientalist view. It is that we, the whites, always have to come and help and support, and be careful what you support if you give money to humanitarian organizations. Ask some critical questions. Make sure it ends up where the real heroes are working, the locals. These are the ones who have taught me what everything is about. The bombing was everywhere. They bombed apartment buildings, hospitals, water pipelines, sewage pipelines, just like in Gaza. Khalil was a young Palestinian refugee boy. He lived in Sabra camp together with his mother. One morning, they went out of the little house in the refugee camp to watch the Israeli F-16 planes come in on the high skies over Beirut to drop their deadly cargo. A bomb landed too close to them. He held his mother by her hand, but she was killed, and Khalil's left arm was ripped off by the shrapnels. Strong and merciful hands lifted him up and ran him into the local hospital in the camp, by the way, named the Gaza Hospital, and tried to save his arm, but they could not, and a team of Norwegian and Palestinian surgeons had to amputate Khalil's left arm. The next morning, he was sitting on the bed, waking up from anesthesia, and a famous British war photographer came by, and he took the picture of Khalil waking up to his nightmare. He is as naked as we can only be. His left arm is amputated above the elbow. All his belongings are in that plastic bag. Their house was also destroyed. He's motherless, he's stateless, he doesn't have a passport, he's a refugee. Nobody wants him, and despite the fact that all international law says he has the right to return to his homeland, he has no right to return. And it's so easy to feel pity for Khalil. We want to lift him up, embrace him, maybe take him to Norway, what do I know? He looks completely helpless. And at that moment, he is helpless. A few days later, this hospital was also bombed in the middle of the night, and it was evacuated in a hurry, and all the patients came to the hospital where I worked, and I met Khalil for the first time. And for some reason, I took these pictures of Khalil, because I met the other side of Khalil. He had regained his control. He wanted to be in charge of his life. He said, let me do the dressing of the amputation stump. You know, war wounds, you have to redress them every day, 2 or 3 times a day, take off the gauze, the gauze pack with hypertonic saline, and take away dead tissue. I said, Khalil, I can give you some pain relief. Khalil said, Dr. Mats, teach me how to do it. Teach me how to do it, and I can manage. You don't bring fish to the starving, you bring a fishing net or a fishing rod. Make them capable of mastering their own lives. He had regained his vitality, and we were only these helping hands supporting the capacity, the remaining capacity of Khalil to master the situation himself. And not only did he look after himself, he was a ray of sunshine into this rather sad hospital with so many amputees and so much suffering. He would walk from bed to bed, sing Palestinian songs, tend to the pillows, find some water if we had, and encourage the other wounded. And to me, Khalil was the true manifestation of resilience and also compassion. He showed me our human capacity to find solutions in the most difficult situations, to resist injustice, to love, to care for others, even in difficult situations, to re-establish function, to learn and to change, or, in short, our capacity to survive. This is a virtue among the Palestinians. It's called sumud, steadfastness, and I see it again and again. And Khalil taught me one more thing as a doctor. I should not only look for what is failing, I should look for what is the remaining capacity. So indeed, it is to strike the balance between, on one hand, showing mercy and compassion, but on the other hand, support the mastering, the resilience, and to show solidarity. And not look at people as helpless, but ask them, how can I support you? And this is where the solidarity comes in. Our strong hands can make the oppressed, the underprivileged stronger, and that is a massive help. Pity doesn't get anyone anywhere, but solidarity supports the oppressed and makes them find their own way through their struggle, in my opinion. So maybe it starts with compassion. You see the pain of the other. You want to do something. You want to change the reality, as you said. And you want to get knowledge. You have to study hard. Maybe your preoccupation is women's rights. Maybe it's the LGBT rights. Maybe it is the environment, whatever. Find knowledge and do deep investigations. And then you find your own way of solidarity, of practical action. And that will lead to change, and change will happen. And you will get more energy for more compassion, and that is the good circle of compassion and solidarity. What is the objective? Well, it's simple. Active compassion, love, and solidarity make the path to justice, to equality, and to freedom. And if we want peace, it is precisely justice, equality, freedom that are the foundations of just and true peace. No peace without freedom, no freedom without peace. Very simple. So solidarity is not an act of charity. It is an act of unity between allies fighting on different terrains towards the same objective. Khalil and the Palestinians helped me continue the struggle in Norway to defend and develop the welfare state, because it's based on equality and justice for all. This is Samora Machel, who was a fighter and was the first president of the Free Mozambique. It's not an act of charity, it is an act of unity. So, Mohammed, thank you for showing me, Khalil, thank you for showing me that the good forces, your compassion, and your willingness to survive are giving us examples that inspire us to go on. You teach life. And as Gandhi said, if you doubt that you can make a change, if you think you will be laughed at and they will try to ridicule you, don't worry. Don't worry. It's because they're weak, those who try to stop you. Gandhi said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. In the end. Gaza. Back to Gaza. What is Gaza to you? Probably this that vague feeling of, poverty and misery and terrorists and Hamas and horrible things. I don't support Hamas. I don't support Fatah. I don't support Jihad or any other Palestinian fraction. I, together with the Norwegian Solidarity Movement, we support the Palestinian people and their right to fight occupation. That is anchored in international law, and they have the right to fight and to battle for their freedom. To me, Gaza is beautiful. Lots of young people, boys, girls coming from school, extremely eager to learn. Extensive poverty, not many toys. This girl cutting up a carton box to make a toy. 75% of the families depending on support from the UN support system through UNRWA, which has just recently seen a cut of 50% in the funding from the US, starving out the people of Gaza even more. Gaza are young people. These are medical students, some of my best friends, Anas Ismail, Maisara, Mohammed, and Youssef, on their way to a meeting where we are going to plan a new project. These are my friends in the artificial limb shop making prostheses for the amputees in Gaza at very high professional level, trying to support their people as good as they can. And these are my friends, the medical students, outside the courtyard of the Al-Azhar University. Two big universities in Gaza, Al-Azhar and Islamic University, around about 25,000 students each. And there is a beautiful wall painting with the subscription, "There is no easy way to freedom." And the daily bread, of course, is also a struggle in Gaza. Little flour, little food, hard to find ways to survive, but they do their best to survive. Very, very ordinary people. And of course, as Kathy has said, where you stand determines what you see. When I stand in Gaza, I see heroic people who ask me, what has the world in plan for us now? Will the siege be lifted? Will there be another bombing? Will we be allowed to travel? Will we have food for our daily bread? We are part of the solution, and we are part of the responsibility. I met Jumana Samouni on the 5th of January 2009. She came to Shifa without her mother. Her left hand had been mutilated, and we had to amputate 3 of her fingers, who were completely crushed. I was in charge of her after she woke up from anesthesia. She was wet and cold and shivering. I went to see her at midnight in the ward, and she was together with a lady who was extremely angry and shouted at me and said, "Why can you not stop it, you white people?" It turned out it was Jumana's grandmother, the mother of her mother. We heard rumors that there had been a massacre in the Zaytun area where the Samouni family lived. We didn't believe it. There were so many rumors, but it turned out, unfortunately, it was true. And Jumana looked at me that midnight with these eyes that I could never forget, as if she was asking me, why is this happening to me, and what did I do? Briefly, without going into depth, what happened in Zaytun that day was a massive bombing. A warehouse with 100 family members inside were bombed also, killing 48 people and destroying 27 homes, a mosque, and a number of farms. There is no argument about what really happened. Jumana's father was killed next to her. It turned out her mother survived, but many of her cousins and her uncles and aunties were killed. How can life go on after this? How do you survive as a small child when you've lost your hand and your father and your house and your home and your security? Well, it's all down to the compassion and the love of her mother. Maisa was 18 when this happened. They had been married for a year. She was very happy, she said. Now she had lost her home, her husband, her beloved one, and she had a daughter with only 2 fingers remaining. And it's easy to feel desperate. She was saddened and quite depressed, but she decided to stand by Jumana, of course, and she asked me, "Can you take a picture?" When I came back in August, she asked me to take a picture of Jumana's hand because she wanted me to go to Norway and ask the plastic surgeons if they could do some operation. And of course, I took the picture and I took it to Norway. We could not do anything for surgical treatment. And of course, this is a small picture of injustice. The hand of a little child, now 11 months old, lost 3 fingers, but surviving. Lost father, but surviving. Has anybody the right to do this against a child? No, they have not. Has anybody been taken to court for this? No, nobody has been held accountable. Maisa stood by Jumana as much as she could. I visited them every time I went to Gaza. This is in 2012. And Jumana grew up to be a very fashionable little lady with a fake fur jacket. And every time I came, she was dressing up, and we had the most fantastic conversations. And I always brought some gifts, and it was fascinating to see her growth. Like Khalil, who I've never met again, unfortunately, but this sumud, this resilience. But of course, somewhere in her memory, there will always be the memory of what happened on the 5th of January, 2009. I went back again in 2012, saw them several times, and grandmother and grandfather taking care of Maisa as if it was their own child. This is a cousin, and this is Jumana, and this is Mother Maisa, who now started to university and got an education. Jumana grew very healthy, but every time there was new bombing, she started bedwetting, and she was scared, and she said, "We want to leave, we want to leave, we want to leave." I met her again in June 2014, only days before the next Israeli attack. She was extremely joyful, energetic, happy. She told me how well she did in school and that she didn't need a prosthesis because her left hand had grown so strong. I remember Khalil with no arm but still mastering. And I went back again now in October last year. She's now a smart little lady. She is doing extremely well in school. She wants to be a translator, and we have these incredibly nice conversations. Her grandparents stand by her in compassion and love all the time. And we always talk, of course, about what happened in 2009. And every time I take a picture of Jumana's hand, because I don't want to forget it. She is my friend. She is my little adopted daughter, in a way. But she is also my responsibility. And I cannot stop telling the story of Jumana and the others because somebody has to be held accountable. It cannot continue like this. And again, back to Gandhi, he says, "When I despair, I remember that all through history, the way of truth and love has always won. There have been tyrants and murderers, and for a time, they can seem invincible. But in the end, they always fall, always." So I hope and I pray, to the extent that I pray, that Jumana and the other kids in Zaytoun and in Gaza will have a better future. We look at pictures, we take selfies, we are incredibly good friends. She means a lot to me, she gives me energy, and the angry grandmother who was yelling at me has become one of my best friends. She serves in the most hospitable way, as Palestinians are, sweet tea and some cookies. They don't have much, but they share whatever they have. I bring, as usual, some few gifts for Jumana that she can use in her schoolwork, and we have a splendid time together in Gaza, occupied Palestine, besieged for now on the 11th year. Remember, everyone can make friends. Everyone can be kind and compassionate. You, all 500 of you can adopt a friend in Gaza, in the Gaza camp, in Jordan, in Amman, in Syria, or anywhere in the world, because you have the internet, you have the capacity, you have Skype, they have it. Why don't you go ahead this week and try to find a friend in Gaza or somewhere else in the world and say, I want to walk along with you. I want to understand how you live. I want to make a change together with you. To end up, some good news from Gaza. 2018, knowledge is power. Instead of sitting down and just complaining and giving up, what are the people of Gaza doing? They're trying to find solutions. We just started a new project, and the medical students in Gaza, in Al-Azhar University, have decided to join in a project. Similar to what we do with the medical students in Tromsø, we train them to be instructors in life-saving first aid, meaning, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, how to stop bleeding, how to treat the wounded. Very often when I stand in the emergency room in Shifa during bombing, I see that many of the patients coming in, they don't have an open airway. They have a blocked airway, which make you suffocate. They have a bleeding going on. Nobody stopped the bleeding. So now we have trained 83 Palestinian medical students, and they have already, since November last year, trained 920 lay people. And it's not done by me or Dr. Hanna. We are the 2 Norwegian doctors training the trainers, but it's been done by these heroes, Anas, Ismail, and 79, 80 others. And they go to the schools. This is an UNRWA school. This is an UNRWA school, and here they're training how to open the airway, head tilt, chin lift, just as the American Heart Association are training us. And this is life-saving. We're treating them how to look for foreign bodies and how to eventually start CPR. And, as one of the students say, you can't stop the war and the bombing, but you can stop the bleeding. So we train them how to stop the bleeding without using the devastating tourniquet, but by lifting, putting pressure, and applying a pressure bandage. Very simple techniques, but life-saving techniques. And every one of you should know your CPR and your bleeding control techniques. Every one of you can save a life. And here you see the students, boys and girls. These are the medical students training. This is in a vocational school, and we don't use mannequins. They train on each other. We even train mouth-to-mouth on each other. And it's extremely energetic and popular. They teach life. They don't give up. They deserve our compassionate solidarity. And here they are training the bleeding control and how to keep the victim warm. Here we are in a girls' school, an UNRWA girls' school. Of course, boys and girls should be trained equally. And this is extremely encouraging to participate in. I was just in the background. Here Anas is a little bit nervous because he's showing all these girls how to do the check of a lifeless person with the headmaster looking after us that we don't do anything wrong. So there are some cultural issues, but it's fine. It's no problem. It's going fine. And afterwards, the training takes about 2 hours. It's such a joyful union between the medical students and the local lay people. They tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. Palestinian young people are seeds. They will never give up. They will never leave. They have the same urge for justice and independency and to get rid of the occupation as all of us have in a situation which may be difficult, but will have a future. And they also do research. This is a poster that we are going to present in Beirut on Saturday. Anas Ismail has just left Gaza, and we are training them to do research, and this is a follow-up research. Finally, and I'm finishing now, I'm actually on 58 minutes now. Tamam? Good news from Jordan. Another small but extremely important example of the fact that the world doesn't change if you don't stand up and try to change it. It's not doing it by itself. You have to look yourself in the mirror and think and reflect, what kind of energy can I be? What kind of energy and force for change can I be? And you all can be that. Look at the students in the United States. Look at the students in Gaza. Stand up. Get out of your bubble. You have good lives. You're privileged. And you have a responsibility. Not only to feel compassion, not only to sympathize, but to do something about injustice. Arden and I are fortunate to be the guests of a very generous lady in Amman, and we live in the Landmark Hotel, beautiful place, beautiful staff. And when you walk there and you take the elevator, you're not only sort of hitting the button to get the elevator, but you look at these fantastic posters all around in the hallways. And this poster is describing the SEP project, which is the Social Enterprise Project. A brilliant example of solidarity and resilience. Respecting the women in the Gaza camp, in the Jerash camp, in the way that they have a phenomenous knowledge of Palestinian embroidery, handwork, culture, deep-rooted culture. They make patterns and they make embroidery in the most beautiful way, and they get paid a decent pay for it. And the brand is sold at a good price, not at an exploitative price like most of our shirts are sold, too cheap, because we are exploiting the people of Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, where they are earning a nickel an hour, because we're going to buy a shirt for $5. They get decent pay. And what is more, every stitch tells a story. Each piece of embroidery is from a single and talented artist, women refugees, who really carries on the Palestinian culture, which is so important part of the struggle. It is to be in touch with your culture, your roots, your history. This project is sustainable. It pays respect to the refugees. They are not seen as helpless victims. It's not based on pity. In the hallway of the hotel, you can see beautiful pictures from the camp by a talented photographer. This hotel is so nice to be in because it's filled with meaning. It's not like being in a Hilton, wherever in the world you are. Not a bad word about Hilton, of course, but every Hilton hotel is the same. You just fall asleep when you get there because it's so boring. Landmark Hotel is a dwell. It's a source of energy and solidarity. And the women in the camp feel respected. They make the patterns, they do the embroidery, and they get a decent pay. And as this project describes it themselves, pity becomes aspiration, refugee becomes artist, camp becomes workshop, heritage becomes cool, violence on women becomes respect, depression becomes pride. I could not say it better myself. It's a fantastic project. It may seem small, but every one of you 500 people may make your own small project. Why don't you travel to the Gaza camp and set up some youthful, cool project with them? Maybe some computer programming project, maybe some exchange program, maybe find some friends, maybe invite them to your school, drink a lot of tea, listen to their stories. That's where the energy is. So thank you, Mary, for your bravery. She also takes top-notch business people from Jordan to the camp to let them smell the camp. What has happened in the camp after the US slashed its funding of UNRWA is that the garbage collection system has broken down and the camp is filling up with smelly garbage. And it was good, I think, for the businessmen to smell that. So I think we should give a big hand to Mary for this fantastic project. It's not a matter of gender or income or color of your skin or your profession. It is a matter of your heart, your devotion, your compassion, your love, and your bravery and your willingness to act. So I conclude with a quote from a brave young girl, Malala, who was shot and nearly killed but stood tall in her struggle to survive. And she says, "Your dreams are too small. Your achievements are too small. Now it's time to dream bigger." So let's join in the force of big dreamers, and let's be active, and let's act and not only talk. Shukran jazilan. Thank you very much. I'm a silly weeper. I have a gift, a banned book. And I have the great pleasure of giving this banned book to the principal and headmaster of the American school. What a privilege. I hope you will read it and share it with the students. Maybe it could be in your library. And while I don't understand why it's forbidden, it's probably because it's telling the truth. And sometimes the truth is inconvenient for the rulers. With great appreciation, thank you. And just to conclude, this is a keffiyeh that I just got from the CEP project. I will, of course, pay for it. It's embroidered in the Gaza camp here in Amman. And I will carry it with great pride. I will put it on as an act of solidarity with the Palestinian people, and I hope you join me. Thank you very much.
Dr. Gilbert, we just want to thank you for what we hoped would be an inspirational keynote that would push us, that would disrupt our thinking, that would inspire us. All of you, students. I mean, at our school we have 47 different nationalities of students, right? So hopefully the challenge is for you to find your place, whether it's in a place like the Gaza or your home country, wherever it may be, that you make a difference. And I think that was the message this morning of you as young people are the change agents. And so we hope this weekend, for those of you who are participating in the Compassion Summit, will seek some inspiration from the work that's happening. My personal hope for ACS students is this gets you thinking about what you can do, because the power is in your youth. So thank you for that. I want to thank Mary Nazal for generously giving of your hotel for our host. I'm now going to turn this over to Mr. Harani, who will be working on some logistics. But again, Dr. Gilbert, thank you for an inspiring, passionate, exciting hour for us.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mads. Very inspiring. I would like to now dismiss the high school and middle school students from ACS, and all the delegates, if you bear with us for a couple of minutes until all the high school and middle school students are dismissed.